Hello everyone. Today's presentation is about the income statement, cash flow statement and cash flow statement analysis. This is the table of content of the presentation. Introduction. This presentation is based on the what is income statement, what is cash flow statement and its information content, and also its information content usefulness for investors for their decision making, and also cash flow statement analysis between BHP Limited, Santos, and Fantastic Limited. And finally, the critical evaluation of financial health of three companies and conclusion on which company is best suited for its lending purpose. What is income statement? Income statement demonstrates the operating performance for the period, and also it includes all the income and expenses which incurred for its main business operations. Normally, income statement is prepared for a financial year, but public companies must submit an income statement to the Security Exchange Commission in each quarter. Information content of income statement. So, according to the Australian Accounting Standard Board, financial reporting presentation has stated on AASB 101. So, sales and revenue generated from its main business and cost of goods sold like labor, material and overhead expenses, gross profit by deducting cost of goods sold from the sales generated. And from that, we have to deduct selling and administrative expenses like advertising, promotion, and general and administrative expenses like rent and utilities and depreciation. And then you get the earning before interest expense, then the interest expense for borrowings and the other expenses we need to deduct from the BIT, and then you can generate the then you have to deduct the income tax for the period and you can generate the net income. So what is the cash flow statement? Cash flow statement demonstrates the exact amount of money that company has spent throughout the period. Also, this require both income statement information and balance sheet information to prepare the cash flow statement. And also it has three main components: operating activities, investment activities and financial activities. So let's see what are the information content of cash flow statement. Operating activities. It records cash gain and spent for sales of its products and services. Operating activities need to get information from the income statement as well as the balance sheet. Then the investment activities. Cash inflows and outflows from the investment activities like property investment on property, plant and equipment and other investments. Financial activities, cash gain and spent for such as companies issued securities and borrowings. Usefulness of income statement for investors. The income statement is really important for investors to identifying the operating profit or loss for the company's accounting period, and also it gives the breakdown for the income. It gives the breakdown of the income statement to identify investor the sales generated for the period, cost of goods sold, interest expenses for the period, tax expenses, uh, earning before interest and tax, and the net income for the period. So most important fact that investors are keen about to know is the earning per share. That means the uh, amount of gain that they will get by investing on shares in that company. So earning per share can be identified through dividing net income by outstanding shares. Then the dividend payment of the company preferably for preferred stock, and they are keen to know about the net income to identify return on investment. Each and every investor except their expectation is to get a return for each and every dollar that they invest. So return on investment can be identified through dividing net income by cost of investment and multiplying by 100. Usefulness of cash flow statement for investors. Cash flow statement provide information how much money company earns and expense for the overhead and other expenses to generate sales. So this investment cash flow provide information about cash inflow and outflow from the investment activities such as property, plant and equipment. So this provide useful information to investors to identify the trend of investing and uh, how the investment activities are happening and how they have gained money and how they have spent money. So for these activities, and the financial cash flow shows the cash flow between the business owners and the creditors. So also it provides the information about the borrowing funds, repayments of debt, dividend paid for the company directors, and the capital injection into the business during the relevant reporting period. This information is really important for information for investors in deciding lending money and cash flow trends in paying back. Also, it is very important for investors to identify what are the major source of cash inflows and outflows and the trends. And also, it is useful for investors to identify the financial health of the company, which activities make money and which activities are not, because it is the reflective of the balance sheet statement. So these are the uh, major source of cash in BHP Limited: payment received from the company customers, new stock issuing, dividend received, and other major positive cash flows are payment for supplies, wages, employee benefits, dividend payments, and taxes, paying taxes and royalties. Cash flow statement analysis for Santos Limited for year 2017, 18, and 19. These are the major source of cash are received from customers, and major usage of positive cash flows are payment for supplies and employees, and borrowing cost and payment for royalties and other taxes. It's a fantastic limited cash flow statement. Major source of cash are received from customers for operating activities, proceed from borrowings, and share issues from financial activities. And major use of positive cash flows are payment for supplies and employees, and paying for commercial bills and payment for tangible and intangible assets. So cash flow trends in BHP and Santos and Fantastic Limited are stated as below. So according to the cash flow statement, BHP Limited has a positive net operating cash flow from the continuing operation for 3 years, and they have a negative net cash flow from the investment and financial activities for all 3 years. Net operating cash flow from continuing operations are higher than the profit before tax in each year, which is a positive impact for the company. And looking at the Santos Limited, they have net cash generated from operating activities have a positive and growing trend for 2017-2019. And Fantastic Limited cash generated from operating activities have a negative impact to the cash flow. The reason for the negative trend is the payment to employees and suppliers and other interest and financial costs paid during the period. So looking at this table, you can identify BHP Limited has generated cash flow from operations more than the net income for the all 3 years. So major reason for the difference are non-cash expenses like depreciation, amortization is higher amounts in all 3 years, and these amounts are not actual cash outflows from the company. Hence, these amounts are added back to the cash flow and cash injection to the as cash injection to the company. And the other reason is positive adjustments were also made to the net income in the form of receipts of interest revenue and dividend revenue. The final reason is the significant impairment costs incurred to the BHP Limited property, plant and equipment, and this had adjusted in cash flow statement by adding back them to net income. So that's why cash flow is greater than the net income generated for the period. So looking at the capital expenditure, BHP Limited generating positive net operating cash flow for all 3 years, which is able to cover its capital expenditure. Looking at the Santos, they were able to cover their capital expenditure in 2017, but 2018 they are not able to cover its capital expenditure through the operating cash flow, but in 2019 again they were able to cover the capital expenditure by generating positive operating cash flow. Then looking at the Fantastic Limited, uh, they have they were not able to cover their capital expenditure for 3 years because their operating cash flow is negative for 3 years. Dividend payment. So BHP Limited is able to cover its dividend payment for all 3 years, and Santos was able to cover its dividend, but in 2017 there is no evidence for dividend payment in Santos Limited. So extra cash generated from operations. BHP Limited has generated extra of operating cash in all 3 years and used the same to repay large part of the company debt. And Santos has generated extra cash from all 3 years, and they have used it to use that extra cash for repayments of borrowings, repayment of lease liabilities, and purchasing of shares. Fantastic Limited has not generated excess in operating cash for all 3 years, and therefore, to pay capital expenditure of the company, they need to consider about the external source of borrowing money or stretch company accounts payables and collecting accounts receivable to cover these expenses. So, looking at the working capital accounts in BHP Limited, BHP Limited has used number of current assets and current liabilities apart from cash and cash equivalents. Also, BHP has used trade receivables as part of working capital. An increase in the receivables has been deducted and decrease in trade receivables has been added back to the net income for finding operating cash flow. And BHP has used the trade payables as part of working capital. An increase in payables has been added and decreased payables has been deducted in the net income for finding operating cash flow. Also, BHP has used inventory as part of working capital. An increase has been deducted and decrease has been added to net income for finding operating cash flow of the company. So these are the other major items effect for cash flow of BHP, Santos, and Fantastic Limited. So you can see as they have stated in the slide. So looking at the capital expenditure trend, they have a positive cash generated for capex in 2019 but negative in the other 2 years. Looking at the Santos, they have a negative and growing trend for capital expenditure. So in Fantastic Limited, in 2017, looking at 2017 2019, they have a negative cash generated for capital expenditure, but the trend is decreasing when it comes to 2009. And the dividend trend, so trend of dividend for BHP Limited in 2017 was $2,921, and in 2018 it has been increased up to 5,220, and 2019 it was 11,395, which shows an upward trend in paying dividends for its shareholders. And looking at the Santos, they have a growing trend for dividend payments, and in 2017 there is no record for dividend payment in Santos. So looking at the trend in net borrowings, and you can see the net borrowings trend in the BHP Limited. So the trend is that net borrowing is reducing from year to year. Companies repaying the debt obligation higher than the raising the new debt. So looking at the Santos net borrowing trend, the trend is that net borrowing is reduced in 2017 and year 2019. Therefore, in these 2 years, companies repaying debt obligation more than raising the new debt. But in 2018, company borrowings are higher than the debt repayment. For Fantastic Limited, their borrowings have went down from 2017 to 2018 and then increased from 2018 to 2019. And there is no repayment of debt to find the net borrowings according to their cash flow statement. So, trend in working capital accounts, the difference between cash sources and cash flow of BHP were increasing, and the company has increased working capital in 2017 and decreased in 2018 and again increased in 2019. So looking at the financial health of BHP, Santos, and Fantastic Limited, BHP company's net cash flow for year 2019 has a negative balance for the reporting period, which indicates that less liquidity of the company to meet its financial obligations. But in 2018 and 17, they have positive net cash flow for all 3 years. However, BHP has positive net cash generated from its operation activities, which indicates that actual amount of cash generated from main business operations has a positive impact. So, the main cash generated activities are cash received from trade customers and dividend received, and positive cash inflow from other 2 years. Also, it has cash inflow from interest. For therefore, BHP in a position to cover its dividend payments to shareholders and to pay other debts for the company. Also, they are able to pay wages, employee benefits, interest, invest on new assets, and tax payment for the government. So, looking at the Santos Limited, they show a positive trend in cash generated from operating activities. So, the company is in a stable situation to pay its suppliers, wages, and other operating activities for all 3 activities. For all 3 years, company's net cash generated from investment activities are negative and has increased trend from 2017 to 2019. Also, company's financial health is not also Santos is suffering from negative cash flow from its financial activities, which the company's financial health is not in a much stable situation where company need to obtain cash from operating activities to pay its borrowings and dividends. Also, to invest in oil and gas, company required to fund from operating activities, which indicates a negative financial health of the company. Looking at the financial health of the Fantastic Limited, they have generated negative cash flow for all 3 years from operating activities, and it demonstrates that company is not in a good condition to pay its wages and for its supplies. Also, it has negative cash from the investment activities, but negative impact has drastically reduced, moving from year 2017 to year 2018, which is a positive sign. Also, company has generated positive cash flow from investment activities for all 3 years. This shows that the entity is much of a struggling company, which using cash from its financial uh, activities from issuing of shares and borrowings to fund the growth and to finance reorganization, to repay creditors, to remain its operation, since net cash flow from operating activities is negative. And deciding which company is suitable for lending, by looking at the financial health of the three companies, it is clear that BHP Limited has a more solid financial health compared to other two companies. Also, they have positive net cash flow from investment activities and from operating activities, which they are able to pay interest for lending money, and they have strong financial health to pay back its borrowings, which trend in net borrowings indicate that the company has paid back its debt obligation in more percentage than its borrowing for the reporting. Then the conclusion. In summary, income statement and cash flow statements are both important for investors in deciding which company they should invest, because it provides the operation performance through the income statement and the actual cash generated and spent by looking at the cash flow statement. And also, cash flow statement provide the financial position of the company. And looking at the three companies financial statements, it is clear BHP Limited has a strong financial position and it is best suited for lending purposes. And these are the list of references, and this is the end of the presentation, and thank you.